Do we build it up in our walking upon the earth in our Christianity? And the answer is no. And if we look through right through the book of Job, you'll see that righteousness, Scripture says there are none righteous. I actually preached this years ago when I was younger in the Lord, and it was actually at a house meeting at the pastor's house. And I got up there and my understanding of the book, and I preached it, and anyway, I thought I did a good job, and I sat down, and one of the saints came up and said, I really enjoyed that, it was really great. The pastor came over, and he said, there are none righteous. No, not one. He says, I think you heard in that talk. And you see, we were both right in the sense that there is a righteousness that we build up ourselves, and there is a righteousness that God gives us for nothing. Well, for great sacrifice, like in the Bible, but He gives us the free gift of righteousness. And we need to appreciate that as we go through this. Anyway, so Satan replied, you know, would he worship you if you took away his stuff? All right, the Lord said to Satan, everything he has is yours in your power. But you must not hurt Job himself. So Satan left. Now listen to this. One day when Job's children were having a feast at the home of their eldest brother, a messenger came running to Job. We were ploughing the fields with the oxen, he said, and the donkeys were in a nearby pasture. Suddenly the Sabians attacked, stole them all. They killed every one of your servants except me. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. Before he had finished speaking, another servant came and said, lightning struck the sheep and the shepherds and killed them all. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Before he had finished speaking, another servant came and said, 3 bands of Chaldean raiders attacked us, took away the camels, killed all your servants except me. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Before he had finished speaking, another servant came and said, your children were having a feast at the home of your eldest son when a storm swept in from the desert, blew the house down and killed them all. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. What would happen if that happened in your life? What would happen? Would you question the existence of God? Totally. Job stood up, tore his clothes in grief, shaved his head, threw himself face downwards on the ground and said, I was born with nothing, I will die with nothing. The Lord gave, now the Lord has taken away. May his name be praised. In spite of everything that had happened, Job did not sin by blaming God. I've been in lesser situations, and I can honestly tell you that I have stuck my head out the window, going up the mountains, swore my head off. I have blasphemed God. I swore my head off. In tears, in anger, in frustration. And is that the natural man? So Job is a unique example. No wonder God used him in this battle which was happening in the heavenlies between good and evil. Okay, so you're getting the gist? So when the day came for the heavenly beings to appear before the Lord again, this is in chapter 2, Satan was there among them. The Lord asked him, where have you been? And Satan answered, I have been walking here and there to and fro, roaming round the earth. Did you notice my servant Job? The Lord asked. There's no one on earth as faithful and good as he is. He worships me and is careful not to do anything evil. You persuaded me to let you attack him for no reason at all. But Job is still as faithful as ever. Satan replied, a man will give up everything in order to stay alive. But now suppose you hurt his body, he will curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, all right, he is in your power not to kill him. Satan left the Lord's presence and made sores break out all over Job's body. Job went and sat by the rubbish heap, took a piece of broken pottery, to scrape his sores. His wife said to him, you are still as faithful as ever, aren't you? Why don't you curse God for dying? Job answered, you are talking nonsense. says in some of the other versions, you are as one of the foolish women. His wife said to him, you are still faithful as ever, aren't you? Why don't you curse God and die? Job answered, you're talking nonsense. When God sends us something good, we welcome it. How can we complain when he sends us trouble? In spite of everything he suffered, Job said nothing against God. Anyway, Job's friends come along. In verse 11, 3 of his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Shua and Zophar from the land of Naaman. And when they heard how much Job had been suffering, they decided to go and comfort him. And while they were still a long way off, they saw Job, but did not recognize him. He was sitting there near the dump, in the ashes, with boils all over his body, and they couldn't even recognize him. While they were still long off, they saw him, and they did not recognize him. And when they did, they began to weep and wail, tearing their clothes with grief and throwing dust into the air and on their heads. Then they sat there on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights without having a word, saying a word, because they saw how much he was suffering. 7 days, 7 nights. I don't know how long he was actually sitting there before his mates turned up. But as we go through, we'll see that it wasn't only just had boils on his body, he had worms crawling through his body. It was scraping the pus off the sores with his potsherd. He could hardly see. He couldn't sleep at night. He was haunted by bad dreams. His body ached all over. He couldn't eat. So he was going through a bad time, and on top of that he lost everything he had, and on top of that his wife says, hey, and this is the wife that gave him the 7 sons and 3 daughters over the years, said to him, curse God and die. So you can see an idea of the travail that happened. He opens his mouth then in verse 3, after 7 days. Finally Job broke the silence, and he cursed the day on which he had been born. Never cursed God, but he went through a whole diatribe there on, hey, cursed the day I was ever born. And in chapter 3, verse 25, he said, everything I fear and dread comes true. In the New King James it says, the thing which I greatly feared has come upon me. Now that's quite interesting, because it's quite a strong scripture in the book of Job. The thing I greatly feared has come upon me. Fear, as we know, is the opposite of faith. He did stuff probably out of fear of the consequences. He feared God. But like when he was sacrificing for his sons and his daughters and all of that, a lot of it was motivated through fear, which as far as God is concerned is a good thing. And it's something we really need to have. It says, fear is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. But he was motivated there by fear and dread, yet faith is the thing that God acknowledges. Righteousness through Abraham came through his faith. It was accounted to him for righteousness. That word accounted in the Hebrew is to count. God counted all the stuff as far as Abraham was concerned and said, okay, that equals righteousness.